Good morning, everyone. We will call this meeting of the Del Mar College Board of Regents to order at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, August 15th. This is a called meeting for the purpose of a budget workshop. Going to call roll to establish our quorum. Mr. Loeb. Here. Mr. Garza. Here. Dr. Adami. Here. Ms. Averett. Here. Mr. Krul. Here. I'm Carol Scott. We have a quorum and can conduct business. We do know that Regents Kelly and Turner and Babley had previously scheduled engagements today and are not able to join us today. Please join us in a moment of silence. Thank you. Mr. Loeb, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join us as we read our Del Mar College vision statement. Del Mar College will be the premier choice for life-changing educational opportunities provided by responsive, innovative faculty and staff who empower students to improve local and global communities. Del Mar College will be streaming our live audio and video from the official Board of Regents meeting on the college's website in real time, with the exception of portions of the meeting considered as closed session by statute. Is there anyone here to address the board in general public comment? Seeing none, we will move on with our items of business for today. We do have a couple of action items, but we are going to start with a discussion on the proposed maintenance and operations budget and the debt service budget. I'm going to ask Dr. Escamilla to open it up as Mr. Garcia prepares for the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. Appreciate this opportunity to kind of open up, and as Mr. Garcia gets ready to tee off here, to talk about our maintenance and operation budget. Of course, it's been a very unusual set of circumstances that we've been dealing with. Come on, Mr. Garcia. I'm not going to be that long. I promise. It's been an unusual year, to say the least. We've overcome some very difficult. Are overcoming some very difficult circumstances that came way late in the calendar year, when we were heading into a year that was probably going to be one of the best overall opportunities and times for the college and for the colleges, community colleges in the state of Texas. That being said, the team. I want to thank the entire team, the entire college team that has been working very diligently throughout the summer to make sure that we have come together and dealt with the circumstances that have been put before us to come up with a preliminary budget for your consideration and review. There are lots of variables and thoughts and ideas that have kind of that will be evoked from the presentation here before you. And so please do not hesitate to bring the questions in or comments forward. That's why we're here today. And again, I want to thank the budget team especially and our executive team for the inordinate amount of time that we have put into this most unusual set of circumstances, I think is the nice way to put it. But for that being said, Mr. Garcia, please kick us off this morning.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. President. So we started the fiscal year looking from our rear view mirror, the college's first business interruption caused by the pandemic. We are now experiencing another business disruption attributed to differences in property valuations between the Nueces County Appraisal District and certain petrol companies in our district. Back in the middle of June, when the college first became aware of the property valuation issue, the college had to toss out the door 6 months of budgeting work. Since then, we have had to pivot in short order to today's new proposed 2024 M&O and debt service budget plan. Thanks to the board, the president, the executive team, the budget committee, general counsel, Mr. John Johnson, Dr. West, and Ms. Landrum, the college has been able to navigate through a vast amount of external information as the property owners continue to navigate through their rights to an appeal. With respect to today's presentation, the college has a history of presenting to the board a budget plan and related property tax rates. For reasons just described, our presentation today will solely focus on the proposed M&O budget and debt service plan based on the best available information at this time. The college will come back to the board at our regular board meeting in September with a 2024 property tax levy proposition. In today's presentation, we will describe budget calendar changes, describe the factors driving the property tax revenue shortfall, describe our strategic financial resource management plan. We have also included some property tax rate history, revenue and expense details, and financial resource management strategies. At the end of the presentation, the college has an action item for board consideration. Ms. Landrum will start us off with the calendar presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Good morning. So for our fiscal year 2024 budget plan calendar, we've provided dates for the budget approval process as we move forward, and then a proposed schedule for our tax rate approval. So during today's meeting, we will ask the board to adopt the action items to conduct our public hearing. Upon the board's approval, we will post the public notices in the college's website and in the newspaper. And then August 29th, we will conduct our public hearing on our budget and seek board's approval for adoption of the fiscal year 2024 budget. If we follow the tax rate schedule that we're proposing, also on August 29th, we will seek board's approval to adopt the action items to conduct the public hearing on the proposed tax rate. Upon the board's approval, we will post those public hearing notices on the college's website and in our newspaper. And then at our regular board meeting on September 12th, we will conduct our public hearing and seek board approval for the adoption of our proposed tax rate for fiscal year 2024. Are there any questions on that? Okay. Mr. Johnson will now continue on the preliminary property tax shortfall.
Good morning. As most everyone has become aware, the appraisal district and two industrial entities are currently at an impasse as to the value of the properties to be assessed. This first slide will show at present the Nueces County Appraisal District has valued those entities at over 2.5 and 2.3 billion respectively. Due to the significant increase assessed to those entities, along with the increased amounts assessed throughout the district, the no new revenue rate for the maintenance and operations as calculated has decreased by 1.6 cents when compared to the prior year. In normal years, this would be good for both taxpayers and governmental entities since the tax rate assessed would decrease. Unfortunately, because the two entities and the appraisal district are so far apart in their respective valuations, the college is sure to see a shortfall in property tax collected due to the assessed amounts being contested and subsequent lawsuits being filed. This slide reflects the difference in the value assessed by the appraisal district of $4.8 billion and the amount proposed by the entities of $2.563 billion. The far right column reflects the property value variance of $2.236 billion on which the college anticipates no collections will be received. This slide, the first line reflects the anticipated tax shortfall from uncollected taxes due to the contested valuation shown on the prior page. Using the M&O tax rate being proposed, the amount of shortfall is estimated to be just slightly over $4 million. The second line shows $3.5 million, or how much the college would have received over the prior year had this issue not occurred. Are there any questions? I'm kind of skipping over this fast. I know we've gone over it previously. Oh, one other thing. There is no impact on debt service rate due to the college being able to set that rate based upon anticipated collections so long as the total rate does not exceed the voter approved rate. Going on tuition and fees, the decrease in budgeted tuition revenue of $1.2 million is comprised really of four components. The $2 increase in tuition should add approximately $100,000. Academic tuition was lowered by $2.2 million to reflect actual amounts collected in the prior year due to slower than expected enrollment growth post-COVID. For 2024, we are projecting a 4% enrollment growth in the new year. This should contribute about $550,000. The continuing education area continues to show strong growth, and that budget has been increased by $325,000. On the property tax assumptions, the overall tax rate deduction of 2.5, the overall tax rate deduction is anticipated to be 2.9 cents less. This assumes a 17.9% net valuation growth, $649 million in new construction. It also assumes a tax shortfall of $4 million on collections due to contested valuations. Anticipated revenue additions based upon valuation changes of $3.5 million. This slide reflects how the items discussed impacted the revenue budget for fiscal year 2024. State appropriations increased by $2.149 million based on the last legislative information. Retirement contributions increased by $95,000, which is a direct result of salary increases. Tuition and fees was reduced by $1.2 million due to the reasons explained previously. Property taxes was reduced by $488,000, as I explained on the previous slide. So total increase to the 2024 budget is $524,000. Any questions?
John,
Yes.
I am slow at math. I'm not Mr. Loeb.
Okay.
So I want to understand, when, on the slide before,
Yes.
where we talk about the assumed shortfall based on the contested valuations of $4 million.
Right.
The slide before, can you go back to the slide before? There we go. And the anticipated, the phrase that I want to make sure I understand, the anticipated tax revenue increase prior to assessed property value change of 3.5. Can you explain that in some different words? Because I'm not understanding what.
Okay. When we calculate the tax rate, it assumes that the total amount, the certified appraisals, the amount assessed, we have to calculate the tax on that amount. Using the tax rate that that is being proposed, we're going 7.9% over the no new revenue rate, which would add $3.5 million based on the certified appraisal. So we'd actually add 3.5, but of that 3.5, there's $4 million that will not be collected because those valuations are included in the assessed value. So even though we're gaining 3.5 on the total, there's 4.4 million of that we will not collect.
So in theory, we should be collecting,
We should be collecting 3.5 and the $4 million would in essence go away.
so if we were going to talk about opportunity costs, it's that 3.5 million in
Correct.
terms of real dollars to us.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I
You're
just
welcome.
had to put it in Carol's words to make sure that I
No.
got it. Thank you, sir.
I had a question on tuition.
Yes.
So the tuition drop, and I know we talked about this last time, the tuition drop is not that we're anticipating fewer students than we had last year. It is that last year, the budget assumed larger numbers of students.
Right. Since COVID started, we have been reducing our enrollment projections each year, assuming that we would have a quicker increase in our enrollment each year. That hasn't happened as fast as we thought. So last year we decreased it, I believe, by about $2 million, and we're doing it again by $2 million to really reflect what we actually collected in 2023 and then start from scratch. And now we're assuming this year we're going to have a 4% growth over 23.
So can you go to the next slide real quick? Okay, so this says that last year we budgeted 24.3 million in tuition and fees. Do we have an actual number on last year?
An actual number?
Or I guess this year? Yeah.
Yes. We're about, well, I'm trying to, because I do parts of it. This year we were about 2.1 million behind on academic in dollars that we collected.
Okay.
On the dual credit side, I mean, on the continuing education side, we were actually 525,000 over budget. So we increased on the continuing education side. We were still below on our academic side. And plus to that, we're adding about 550 million for the 4% anticipated growth.
Okay. And just a question, these are new guy questions. I assume our fall tuition is kind of the first tuition tranche of a new fiscal year, and then each year includes fall through summer, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Right now, the last enrollment numbers we got as of yesterday, we were still 4% over where we were last year.
Okay. So
And that enrollment starts in April.
okay.
Yeah.
But so we're 4% over what we were last year for this fall.
Correct.
But we don't necessarily know when we budget, we don't know what we kind of know what fall's going to be, but we don't know what spring or next summer's going to be.
So if I can say that the past 3 years for sure have been absolutely unpredictable, and we've just kind of waited to the last minute. This year seems more normal, if you will. There is a slight uptick, and we've seen 3% and 4% up from last year, day to date. And so as such, as I was explaining earlier to Chair Scott, that another week, and we'll have more really solid numbers, and we'll have to start nailing down a number here in less than 10 days. We still have another Saturday registration this week. Last Saturday, I think we saw 300 students or 300 students on Saturday morning, and thanks to the team for being out there bright and early and out late. So one more Saturday registration, plus all the adds and drops and all the things, adding classes and so forth, which is our normal kind of churn at this time, will give us a really strong indicator whether that's going to be a 3% or 4% or maybe even a 5%. Of course, we have all the waivers and all those things, and that's what John's always worrying, John and us as well, not just John, but it's something. It's something that adds to it. It's just not that simple as a percentage. And then now we have, and I just got to add this while I have this opportunity. Just as was stated, and John, I was so happy that you brought that up, is this, continuing education is now taking on a new platform, if you will. It is a new a way of looking at things. And so as we're looking at the whole budget and so forth, the fact that we're talking about both categories of students and the total budget is really what we've been doing for a long time, but now it's being verified, recognized rather, by the state. And will be a different way of doing business for the state, but you'll be hearing that more and more. So thanks for doing that, John.
Okay. Complete our fall enrollment, and usually by the end of September, we have good numbers and good amounts. What our total that we've collected for fall enrollment, that will pretty much indicate how we're going to look at the end of the year, because we're pretty consistent that fall enrollment, it usually falls into about 40%, 44% of the total amount we're going to receive for the year within 1 or 2%. So
Okay, great.
it's a pretty good indicator.
So, yeah, so fall doesn't typically disconnect from spring to such an extent
Not normally.
that
I
you
think
can't
we've
budget.
had one year where the summer came in real high, which was kind of an anomaly. I think it was 2 summers ago.
Yes.
But that was unusual.
Yep. And one other thing too is we have the multiple types of scenarios. It's not just the 16-week scenarios. We have the 8 weeks. We have the
Right.
15 weeks. We have, all these other short terms that actually fall into spring enrollment, but yet when I always ask the question, but where are the bodies, the live human beings that are here with us? They're here with us in the fall, being counted for the spring and so forth. So it remains a kind of a multifaceted, kind of a moving target all the way through next summer because of the variations in our schedule.
Okay. I'd just say, like, because we've had a lot of questions on that. If we can have actuals next to the budget to the extent that we know them when we're doing the next year's budget, I think that would be really helpful in understanding that.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
And along those lines, I assume the 4% increase is calculated on prior year's actuals, not prior year budget.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
In a previous slide, you said that no new revenue would result in a 1.6 cent decline in property.
In the tax rate.
In the tax
In the
rate.
no new revenue rate.
So the previous slide said overall, we're going to increase, it's an overall tax reduction of 2.9 cents.
That's both debt service and M&O.
Oh, okay.
In those other slides, I'm just talking about how it impacts our M&O budget,
Okay.
our operating.
All right. Okay.
Any other questions?
So the 1.3 cent decline in the debt service then is due to the reduced amount of debt that we owe?
Yes. Last year it was 22 million. I can't remember the exact number. 22.7, I think. And this year our debt service requirement is 20 million. So
Yeah.
it was reduced
Okay.
by $2 million.
Regent Crowley, you'll see over the next few years a
Right.
decline in that area. We're paying off debt.
Unless we decide to take on more debt.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Try to remember where I was.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine, that's fine. So the far right column shows the tax rate as proposed for 2024 of 0.237002 cents. The M&O rate, of course, is 0.179436, and the debt service rate being 0.57566. This total rate is 2.9% lower, 2.9 cents lower when compared to the prior year rate of 0.266104. At the bottom, you will see that an average homestead with a value of $224,000 will pay $532, which is $2 below the previous year. Although that difference seems very slight, the reason for that is in the prior year, the average homestead value was only $200,675. So the average value of a home this year increased by 12%. So that's why you don't see a significant, because the prior year amount of 534 is calculated on that $200,000 figure.
Does the property tax bill that the governor just signed have any impact on Del Mar?
No,
Or is that all
No, sir.
strictly
no,
school
that
districts?
was on ISDs.
Okay. And this 23 cents, does that include this is the maximum that we can charge, basically 8% over last year's revenues?
On the M&O rate, it's the maximum. We're
Okay.
at 7.99% over the no new revenue rate. On debt service, we have a little more leeway on debt service because what they do is we're allowed to calculate it based upon anticipated collections, so that we have a little more. We can't do that on the M&O. We do have a collection rate, but it's on the prior year rate. So last year, the collection rate was about 95, little over 95%. The anticipated collection rate going forward because of this issue going on this year is at 89, which allowed us to make up the shortage we might have seen from this issue on the tax entities. And we're still below, we still have a maximum rate that we can charge, but we're still below that maximum
Okay.
rate.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I know you're getting ready to hand it off to begin to talk about strategies to maintain our budget, but on a revenue projection, we in the last several years have tried to project out 3 to 5 years to give us some indication going forward. I realize that answer is not available today.
Correct.
But could you, in the next couple of meetings, just on the property tax, can we talk about what this change does to us over the next 3 to 5 years? Because again, there's lots of other assumptions out there with state revenues and tuition and other things, but
Right.
I'm really interested on what this property tax anomaly is going to do to us, because it's not just a one-year effect, it's a lingering effect.
Unless there's some settlement in this, issue.
Before September.
It's somewhat of an ongoing effect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Assuming it stays the same, we'll work on it under that scenario.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Jackie will now go on to the expenditure side of the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. So for our preliminary expense budget for 2024, we are going to use strategic strategies to maintain our budget. So we are asking department managers to focus on the students as they're making decisions throughout the year, and that those decisions support the mission of the college. We anticipate strategic hiring throughout the year to ensure that only positions that are a priority are filled. For non-salary categories, especially travel and professional development, we anticipate departments being very purposeful with their spending. We understand that professional development is essential and supports our strategic plan. However, we need to be prudent as we progress throughout this next year. To fund priority items that we've identified, we have strategically reallocated our resources, which I will go into further on the next slide. So by strategically reallocating our resources, the college will be able to fund the college's increased property insurance and the increased cost of internet, networking, and security equipment to support the internet connectivity, along with the continuous improvement of our network infrastructure capacity to ensure stable and continuous services for students, faculty, and staff. The strategic reallocation will also fund the expected increase in the college's security contract that is expected to increase at renewal, an increase in the fire and life safety inspections with the addition of Oso Creek campus, along with an increase in the cost of maintaining grounds on all of the campuses. Are there any questions on this slide? Okay, so for our preliminary expense budget for fiscal year 2024, the total salaries and benefits are decreasing by $1.3 million. Ms. McDonald is going to discuss this on the next slide. For our non-salary expenses, we are expecting an increase of the $1.9 million and a small increase for our contingency of $7,865. So these changes give us a total preliminary expense budget of $115,230,382. Are there any questions? Okay, Ms. McDonald is going to continue with the preliminary employee compensation changes.
Thank you, Ms. Landrum. I think on this particular slide, we'll focus on maybe the larger changes to budget for basically people. I think that Ms. Landrum mentioned in our strategies to maintain our budget, in this preliminary budget, you're going to see that there are no salary increases that are being proposed. So what we did to maintain our budget is, if you look at the kind of the far two columns, the vacancy and the total columns, where Ms. Landrum just spoke about the 1.3 million reduction, that primarily is coming from some capacity that we had in our vacancy factor. You know, we've talked about this in prior meetings, that we are not 100% filled in our positions 100% of the time. So we did have some extra capacity and vacancy from what we are trending. So we did increase that vacancy factor to help fund some of the capacity that we needed. And then so the far right column, you'll see there's almost 106,000 increase in the faculty salary line. That increase is coming from, this budget does include faculty promotion and rank. That was about 148,000 probably. So that does include, so we did want to make that clear, that those that did receive their promotion letters earlier in the summer, that this budget does include the cost for promotion and rank. We see a decrease in some of the exempt salaries. Primarily that's coming from that extra capacity and vacancies on exempt salary instruction. That's coming from some of the extra capacity in vacancies, but also turnover. When you have people leave, they've been here a while, their salaries are a little higher, so you may bring some in at a little bit lower in the pay range. Non-exempt salaries, it's 1.1 million. We had quite a bit of capacity in the vacancy rate in non-exempt, because that's primarily where we do see, or where we have seen our vacancies come from various departments across the college on the non-exempt side. So that's where we had more of the capacity and vacancy, was through the hourly or non-exempt positions. And then on your non-exempt instruction, we did increase that because we do have an increase in part-time monies for that non-exempt instruction, like we talked about earlier about the CE. So a lot of that is coming from the CE side, and the workforce side is anticipating more expense in those areas to help fund those instructions that we know that are coming. So that brings the overall salaries at right at $1 million less, and then when you put in the associated benefits and taxes to those salaries, that's where you get the 1.3, almost 1.4. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. So our next two slides is going to give you that detailed breakdown of our expense budget following the categories that we use in our monthly financials. So for salary and benefits, we have the decrease of the 1.3 that Ms. McDonald just discussed. For our non-salary categories, you can really see the results of our strategic reallocation of the resources. We have analyzed every department line item to shift those resources to where they're typically being spent, and then to reallocate those funds that weren't being utilized. So for equipment, that reduction of the 297, that's due to a request to reallocate those funds within information technologies budget to computer software and hardware. For consultants and contract labor, although we are increasing this category for our ground maintenance contract, we average about $2.5 million in expenses each year, so we are reallocating those funds that are not being utilized. For the computer software and hardware increase of $918,000, that's to cover that internet connectivity and the continuous improvement of the college's network infrastructure. Do we have any questions on this slide? So for our fiscal year 2024, we do not have any elections, so we have reallocated those funds. The $50,000 for security is to fund that expected increase for that contract renewal. For utilities and telephone, that $236,000 is expected increase to cover the cost of the college's internet. And then we have the $1 million for the increased property insurance premium. And then the $113,000 for miscellaneous is related to anticipated increase in fuel and rent. So now that our transportation training program is offering night classes 5 out of the 6 days a week that we have classes, we do anticipate a significant increase in the cost of fuel, especially since the price of diesel has increased by 30% to $4 a gallon. So with those increases and then the $7,000 in our contingency, our total preliminary budget for fiscal year 2024 is that $115,230,382, which is a 0% increase.
Nope, I'm good.
Any questions? And that concludes our budget presentation.
On the fuel and
Yes,
so
sir.
on, I mean, this is a minor item, but is it possible that the participants in that, whether there be an increase, a slight increase in the fees for that program for?
We did that. There's Lenore. Go ahead, Lenore.
Yes, sir. We increased the fees last year to $4,500, and that is part of this continuing education increase in revenues this year came from the Transportation Services Program. So they are at maximum capacity of students right now.
That's a very popular program, I understand.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
3-month backlog in terms of enrollment, up to 3 months. The team saw these things coming. They tightened up, going to $4,500 per certification, per course, I should say, complete course for CDL, up from
4,000.
4,000 to 4,500.
Okay, thank you.
Relatively modest, if
Yes.
all things considered.
Thank you.
Okay, so we checked off all the boxes, right? We went over and described our calendar changes, the variables affecting our property tax revenue shortfall, and then we just described the details of our revenue and expenses. So now you have before you a $115.2 million balanced budget for your consideration. There's an action item for your consideration.
Do we actually take action today? We don't take action.
Not to approve it or anything else. It was just for consideration in case there were any pieces in there. We put it in there, or any kind of variables in there for approval. But no, the answer is no.
So because we don't take action until the adoption
Exactly.
on August 29th.
Yes.
So
Yep.
today is for any feedback and discussion.
Yep. All the feedback, all the discussion we want today.
I have a question. I had heard earlier that the appraisal district had requested a double-digit percentage increase in their budget, which we pay. Is that included in this?
I'm sorry, in terms of the
John-
fee that we pay to the appraisal district?
Yeah.
Okay.
Last I heard, they hadn't finalized their budget based on public comments that were made at their last meeting on their proposed budget. My understanding is they were going to keep their budget flat.
Okay, well,
At the meeting that Mark and I attended, where we made public comment, their board directed staff to have a zero increase budget, including salary increases. So
okay. I just want to ensure that everyone suffers together.
Exactly. I agree.
And I wanted all of our staff to hear that.
Well, and I think that would be at our request that somebody monitor, John.
John's usually, he's our point on this.
Yeah, would you monitor their budget process and alert Mr. Garcia and Dr. Escamilla if that changes? Because again, that's the direction we heard, and I've not been monitoring it. But I think it would make sense for us to monitor that budget process as well.
Because I think if they are not having the same effects that we are, my understanding is there's the capability to formally appeal that or dispute that, and I think if that is the case, that we should avail ourselves of that opportunity.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't have any comment related to our process, our budget. I wanted to provide some comment, though, around the, what was the intent of the work that was done on state appropriations. and that the over $2.1 million that we received from the state has allowed us to be in a less than catastrophic position. But that was not the intent of those funds. The intent of those state funds was to invest in our programs, invest in outcomes-based opportunities, funding, outcome-based programs and opportunities for our students. And it was not the intent of the legislature to bail out community colleges who have these kinds of anomalies, nor is it the intent of the tax code to look at these kinds of big swings in property tax revenues for the taxing entities. All along, we have said that we are appraisal agnostic, and that the college is not looking for any specific side in a discussion or a debate that is occurring about appraisals, but that the impact to the taxing districts and the lack of certainty and the lack of ability to plan based on those kinds of anomalies was not the intent of the tax code. And so we have continued to look at ways that we might try to insulate ourselves from these kinds of impacts in the future. But I wanted to be real clear that while the impact is not as catastrophic as we thought it was going to be 30, 45 days ago, 60 days ago, it is still, I think, very, very detrimental to the college, our inability to have the strategic hires that we had previously identified, to continue moving forward, to not be able to provide salary increases to our faculty and staff in this day and age with what we thought was going to be the potential resources we had available is just very disappointing to all of us. So I wanted to say that as we move forward in this. We've not had a lot of public discussion about the budget process, and I think the board has tried to keep a balanced approach to this, but we've also worked very hard to look at opportunities that we might have to buffet or to insulate the college from these impacts, and we've not been as successful as we thought we might be. So just want to say that your board acknowledges the belt tightening that is going to be occurring in the next fiscal year, and I'm sorry for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, you're articulating my sentiments in a lot better way than I possibly could have. With the progress that was made at the state level, my thoughts were that we'd be able to do some outreach, extensive outreach, and also I thought that we'd be able to take our advising activities to a lot higher level, which would have culminated in achieving a lot greater things than we can possibly do with the budget we're adopting. Still, my sentiments are that I think that staff has done a great job. I applaud their efforts to try to get us through this. And Dr. Scamilla, yourself too, but certainly applaud the work of the staff to be able to get us over this hurdle. But I look forward to, like you do, to finding a way to be able to get the state and our appraisal districts to work in a manner that's going to be able to make our jobs a little easier. Thank you.
I too want to thank staff and everybody involved, employees in working through this with us, and thank you, Chair Scott, for your comments. We would be in a catastrophic position if the state had not increased our funding. This would be a whole different conversation. And while I certainly don't speak for the rest of the regents, I think we're trying to be very measured in our tone, because I think we all are very frustrated, perhaps even angry. I will speak for myself that we're in this situation, because this is not what we had hoped or planned or worked toward. All of the time that Dr. Escamilla and Chair Scott spent on the interim task force around community college finance, and it is just, while it's not catastrophic, I think it is devastating that we're in this situation right now.
Thank you all very much.
I'd like to add a couple things. Yeah, anger works for me. And we have not wanted to do this discussion in executive session. It was basically necessary. But now that we are not, I want to give kind of a breakdown of the areas that we've identified that are concerns for us. One is, as you heard the budget staff say, we knew about this in mid-June, and they got to throw out 6 months of budget work because of that. And so that is a big concern for us, is that we have heard that other people knew earlier and we were not told. The second is we do not really care what individual property taxpayers' appraisals are. This is not an issue of what somebody's value is. This is an issue of the difference between the value that we have to set a tax rate at and the value that we will actually collect. If they had an agreement on a value, no matter what that value was, we would not have an issue. That could be $1 billion, could be 6, could be anywhere in between, could be 500 million. And so one of the things that I think we're going to work on very hard is to decouple our rate setting, our tax rate setting, from the appeal process, because we don't want to be involved in anyone's appeals. We recognize that people have the capability to appeal and they have the right to do that, and we respect that. And then on the third is, because this has been going on for a while, is we are concerned about the period of time for appeals, because without the last issue being solved, we're just going to keep running. And given the amount that is talked about, it creates a problem for our ability to manage the college and to pay our people what they're worth and pay them for the work they've done. And so I think there's a special called session of the legislature in October, and we're trying to include some of this in there, I think, but and I'm sure we'll talk about it more in depth, but I just wanted to give everybody a rundown. You know, this is I know the last month I've spent more time on Del Mar meetings than I did in the previous months combined, and I know I'm relatively new, but the intensity of action of the executive staff and the regents has been very high, and we're doing that because this is an issue that we really care about and that is really important, and it's our job, and we're sad that it's had this effect. But we want everybody to know that we're going to keep working on this. This is not just pass budget, eat it, and move on.
Well, I think too that a couple of things is, should the issues between the appraisal district and these entities be resolved, there's ability in the future to amend the budget to make some changes that are at the appropriate time. And I think also a comment was made that the funding from the state was intended to enhance the programs of the college. And by this budgetary issue, we're now using those to balance the budget, basically, rather than do enhancements. And I think that puts us at kind of a disadvantage, maybe in terms of competition with other community colleges that can use that money, that aren't facing this issue. So we need to do a lot of work to correct all these issues. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Those were not questions for you. I apologize for making you stand there, but I felt like, given the last month of discussion we've had, that Regents needed an opportunity to make some comments in that regard.
Thank you, Regents.
Thank you, sir. So we do not have action item on this item today. We will move on to item number 2, which is discussion related to a proposed one-time inflation relief payment to our employees. Dr. Escamilla?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regents, this item, which is for your consideration for approval, is an item that mitigates the circumstances to a degree. to a considerable degree, but still, as has been stated several times this morning, not what we were expecting to do in the future. This item that is a proposed one-time inflation relief payment to our employees is based on this current year's budget. And I want you to know that, and it's going to have all kinds of nuanced implications and so forth that Ms. McDonald's going to explain, but we want you to know that, and we want the college to know, and we've begun communicating this to the college, that this is an effort to, it's not what we're, it's not completely where we wanted to be, but again, it is something that would, again, assist with the times that we're in, and we've done it, we did it last year. As well, given where inflation was and so forth. If there was ever a time for it, this is it, Regents, and we thank you for this opportunity for your consideration. Ms. McDonald.
Thank you. As Dr. Escamilla mentioned, this whole proposal is based off of the FY23 budget. It's not tied to the 24, so it's the 23 budget. So we're proposing a one-time employee payment in the effect of like an inflation relief to all full-time employees that are employed on the day of the payment distribution to receive a one-time payment through payroll of $1,200 gross. What that means, it's before employee taxes are deducted. And then all part-time employees that are active on the day of the payment distribution, that they receive through payroll a $300 gross. That's before applicable employee taxes are deducted. So here's a snapshot from last week. So here's our head count. So here's a snapshot of what this investment in our employees would be. It'd be a little over $1.1 million. And we're proposing that the payment could be made sometime in mid to late October of 23. This is very similar to what we did last year. And this does include employer payroll taxes, because the college would still have to pay matching Social Security and a couple other little smaller amounts. So this is just the employer taxes included, because it is an expense. So what we're proposing is that as allowed under Del Mar College Policy B4.1.1 under Financial Reserve Section A, administration is recommending that the Board of Regents consider using the FY23 budget contingency line item of a little over $1.7 million to fund this expense. Now, what we would do, if this is something that the board would like to consider, we would take direction from Dr. Escamilla, is that we are proposing we could bring it back to the board at the August 29th meeting for approval, if this is something the board would like us to move forward with.
Can I ask why October rather than September? Is it September 30th, the end of the fiscal year?
We can encumber the contingency and pay it just September for the staff that has to do this work, because it basically would be almost 1,200 individual. They have to do manual entries. September is extremely busy for the payroll and HR staff because it's the new year, and then trying to get all in some new faculty and everyone in line and all the adjuncts entered, because those have to be entered, and any part-time that we use all have to be activated every September 1st. It's just an extremely busy time in September to put this extra piece on staff.
Gotcha. I just wanted the end of the fiscal year September versus October.
Yes.
Perfectly makes great sense.
If it lines up, we could pay a little earlier in October. We can bring that. I can bring a specific date back to you later in August.
Any questions or concerns from the Regents about this proposal?
So this is using this year rather than next year's contingency? So it's it's unexpended money from this year, basically.
Correct. Contingency dollars.
I think that's a great idea. I think one of the things we we have to figure out with the appraisal issues is how to isolate that issue from the budget. But I think this is a way to, when we get that money in arrears, if there's extra money that we get, this is a good thing to use it for, since the burden is falling on our staff on salary. So I think finding ways to give it back to them is.
Well, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, if there's no concerns, then that will come back to us for an action item, again, on August the 29th. We do have an action item today, number 3, which is our motion to adoption of the order to conduct a public hearing. So Mr. Garcia will present that item number 3, correct? Has your name on it.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I didn't hear that.
Item number 3.
Okay, item number 3. So yes, ma'am. So we presented earlier the budget, and so now the next step is to comply with the state statute that requires us to provide to display our budget to the public. And so we are now asking the board to take action on this next item.
So again, this will be a public hearing and adoption of the budget only on the 29th, according to the calendar that Ms. Landrum showed us earlier. Is there a motion to adopt the order to conduct the public hearing as presented? Motion by Dr. Adami, second by Mr. Krewell. He's sitting next to me, sorry, I heard him first. Any questions on the motion? Is there any public comment on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adoption of the order as presented, please raise your hand. Any opposed, same sign. That motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you.
And number 4 is an action regarding the implementation of the financial aid SWIFT transfer program, which was part of House Bill 8. And so Dr. Escamilla and Ms. Keys are going to give us some background, and then we've got a group presentation.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. As our team is coming up, I can't tell you how excited I am. There is a yin and a yang to this whole thing, but Ms. Landrum said it best when she came up. When we're putting the students first, everything else is just details. It's just, they are the details of the day. But this is an opportunity, Regents, to move forward in a way to serve students like never before, historically like never before. Leonard, you said it best the other day. You said we finally got there. We're finally getting there, because we're right at the goal line, if you will, with regard to serving a game changer for educational attainment in our community, which is our dual credit offerings. And I'm not going to steal the thunder or anything else, but I am going to set the stage because, again, I want to thank the team, Bob, Leonard, Patricia, everybody who's been Gracie, everybody who's been working on this for so long, to be able to even be talking about this today, due to the good work Regent Scott, that the Commission on Community College Finance was able to put together as a culmination of an historic opportunity for Del Mar College and this region of the state, for the entire state, but specifically today, our region. Thank you for that, Ms. Keys.
There we go. Thank you very much, Dr. Escamilla and Regents. This is an historic moment and a culmination of really what happened with House Bill 8, and actually through the leadership of Dr. Escamilla and Regent Scott through the Commission on Higher Education Finance. Coming together, they were able to focus on dual credit and some of the changes that came to be. What you're going to see today is just a small part of what really is coming out of this change. And it's how we can begin to work more effectively with our independent school districts and charter schools, and focusing on dual credit and how those classes are offered and how they're provided through what we call the FAST program, or a financial aid program that goes to all students who qualify under the disability, not disability, the higher education free food, free lunch program. And so what we're going to do is, right now, it's very important that we be able to work with these school districts and charter schools on the MOUs that are due beginning of the school year. And so we need to bring about the changes that you're going to see. This opportunity is to advance the initiatives under House Bill 8 related to the dual credit courses, and specifically offering college credit and continuing education courses at no cost to students, and particularly to educationally disadvantaged students under the FAST program, which is financial aid for SWIFT transfer. This program provides for state reimbursement through an allotment process that will pay $55 per semester credit hour instead of the $33 that the college is presently charging for students who are eligible for the FAST program. It is estimated that presently 69% of students in our area are eligible as educationally disadvantaged or part of the free lunch program, including students who are taking credit and continuing education courses. To be fully competitive and reach all the students in the ISDs and charter schools as described in the bill, we are proposing this to be at no cost to all students. This will allow for a more structured model and for the college to fully leverage the additional funding that the state will fund tied to the 17 metrics or incentive program that's going to be phased in over this next year. Today, we're not going to go into all 17 metrics. That's something that we're going to be dealing with the school districts over this year. But what you're doing today is setting up, allowing the administration to put into motion so that we can work with the school districts to better implement this. And Patricia is going to go into more of that detail now.
Thank you, Ms. Keys. The House Bill 8 model provides an incentive for funding for Del Mar College, which Lenora talked about, the 17 metrics. Dual credit will increase course offerings with school districts, and that it will align with the Del Mar incentive plan. Dual credit has already begun streamlining the degree plans with school districts and charter schools. We have already been meeting with school districts. Streamlining the courses with the high school students in turn will reduce the excessive coursework hours that sometimes happen to dual credit students. House Bill 8 eligible students will enroll in college credit at no cost, as well as students who are not eligible under the FAST plan. So it's totally free, and we would like to do this.
This is an example of the funding that came about this last year as we looked at different options and analyzed all the dollars going forward and how we could really meet the letter of the intent coming out of House Bill 8, which was to provide at no cost to the student the FAST program. So we looked at the enrollment for this last year in dual credit for the credit programs, and we had over 32,000 semester credit hours. And when you look at that, students were paying, or the high schools were paying, at $33 a credit hour. So we took 69% of those students, which would be eligible under the FAST program, and at $55, that would generate over $1.2 million. So we essentially could cover the dollars that were spent last year's budget with going to the $55 rate. Now, this is an allotment process that the state will reimburse us with this year. And so what we're proposing is that we change the $33 per semester credit hour to basically the allotment of $55 to allow for the cash flow to cover this ability to offer at no cost to the students. Any questions on this?
Just for clarity, so all dual credit students, regardless if they are free and reduced lunch eligible or not, will have the same tuition rate, which is zero,
That's correct, to the student,
Okay.
except for your private schools,
except for your private schools.
As per statute.
as per the statute, as covered under House Bill 8.
We want them to understand we're still their partners. We will always be their partners and work with them in the ways we can. We have limitations given the parameters of the statute.
Correct. And so this is for all students in our service area and beyond. So this is any student, whether they're in our service area or not, or
Yes.
taxing district. There's no differentiation between service area, taxing district. All community colleges can offer this all throughout the state, whatever. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
In fact, the universities are offering it, and other community colleges are coming into our area right now. Right now, I'm going to ask Dr. Rivera to speak just a minute to the areas that we are covering.
Yeah, let me just add to that. Also, the technical colleges are allowed to participate in this as well. So university, it's a statewide operation, and competition will be elevated, shall we say.
Yes.
Thanks, Lenore. I appreciate that. Regents, Dr. Escamilla, Chair Scott. Yes, this program is going to have a wide impact on not only our service area, but I would say even within our 11-county coastal Bend area. I think presently, and I could be corrected by Patricia right behind me, but I think we service about 30-plus schools with dual credit right now. On the continuing education side, we service probably closer to 40. So there's going to be really a great impact on what we could provide the students through the FAST program at no cost. It's going to be a game changer, as Dr. Escamilla has said, and it's going to allow these students to be able to complete out industry credentials, make their way towards some of these metrics, which some of them are the completion of 15 semester credit hours, the completion of 15 semester credit hours that transfer to a university, and just other things that go with regard to earning an associate's degree and things of that nature. So it's going to help our performance tier funding quite a bit, and all of this information will be gathered by way of a CBM report, the coordinating board report, this fall, and then that report will be gathered, certified, and then we will be funded based on the number of semester credit hours times the $55 rate that the state has allocated for us. Lenora?
Thank you, Dr. Rivera. If there's no more questions, then we're asking for an action item and a vote on this recommendation that the board grant the college administration authority to work with the ISDs and charter schools to implement the dual credit FAST program under House Bill 8, and essentially to change the tuition from $33 to the allotment of $55 per semester credit hour to FAST program eligible students, and to enter into MOUs with participating ISDs and charter schools that provides for no cost to all other non-FAST students, including those in credit and continuing education programs.
Is there a motion to that effect?
Second.
So moved. Thank you. Second. Are there questions on that motion?
I have a couple questions. First of all, this is fantastic.
Thank you.
I read today's agenda and I went from anger to elation. I had the two extremes of emotion I think I'm capable of. And so there's also a piece in here about, lack of a better word, lab fees for, I guess, CE and books. I assume that that is taken care of, both we and the school districts. On top of the, our reimbursements get reimbursements revenue from if they meet certain thresholds, if they get a degree, or if they get a certain number of transferable hours. And so the idea is that those costs will be covered by those payments from the state as well, right?
Yes, sir, you said it perfectly.
Okay. I think that's fantastic. To that end, my understanding is that the school districts are limited in how much money they can get from the state, that they have a cap. So, I mean, I think something for October, since the state's cracking that nightmare open, that might be something for us in the association to lobby for, is removing any caps or limitations that schools have on getting funding from the state for having their students participate in dual credit. Because I think, like, for instance, CCISD does, right now, they're at their cap on how much money they can get. And so if we want to really get these going, if they don't have a cap just like we don't, I think that'll help a lot. So, and I know we're going to work on transportation a little bit too. And so this is just the start, but it's a game changer. Rudy just whispered, and this is fantastic. You know, I know we started collegiate right after I got out of high school, and I was like, wow, that would have been great. And I think this is kind of the first step in making every high school kind of like what collegiate is. And I've gotten nothing but positive feedback from the community on this. So thank you all so much for your work, and we really appreciate this.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I know the staff is very appreciative, and they do a tremendous amount of work.
Are there any other questions or comments on this motion? Yes, sir?
Well, this isn't real, well, semi-related, but I saw some news article about that A&M Kingsville was upping their programs for dual credit also. Is this as a result of this or some similar program?
This is a result of the work primarily done with HB8. And as such, when HB8 opened up to universities as well as technical colleges, it was kind of a watershed moment for everybody to move in and secure their positions at the beginning of this academic year. So it really has to do with the timing. I would have loved a little bit more time to prepare for it, especially given all the things going on. But hats off to our staff for stepping up and getting things in there, making things work, and to the entire college actually, for allowing us to even be able to propose this to you, given the circumstances.
Yeah, the news article is a little bit sketchy, other than that Kingsville was out recruiting for dual education students.
They've been doing it, Regent Kroll, they've been doing this for years, over the years, off and on, and so it's not a surprise to us. In fact, we talk to them. I speak routinely to their leadership over there, and we're apprising each other of what we're all doing and so forth. At the end of the day, if the rising tide lifts all ships is the theme that we can all adhere to, we wish them all the luck that they can have, but because we know where we're going to go. Thank you.
The intent of the legislation or the discussion around House Bill 8 when we were working on this was to realize underserved in terms of geography and regions of the state, but underserved populations in terms of the students who can't even afford, or the school districts who can't afford that tuition. And so this is doing exactly what it was intended. While we would have loved to be able to claim 100% of the revenue from the FAST program, it certainly makes sense to create more opportunities for our students statewide, which is what this is all about. What we do know is that we have an excellent history with our existing and past and future partners, that our faculty and our programs and our dual credit team out there working on all these programs on both the academic and continuing education side is really unparalleled in our service area. So I think we're looking for some great growth opportunity here. And as Mr. Loeb has reminded us on a number of occasions, the sooner we can get, and Mr. Garza as well, the sooner we can get students in the pathway and the mindset of a college degree, whether that is career-based or whether that is academic-based, the better for all of us. So, good work on this. Is there any public comment on this motion before we actually go to a vote? I do have to ask for that. Is there any public comment on this motion? If not, we have a motion on the floor as presented in our staff recommendation. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed, same sign. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you again for all the work.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
At this point in time, the board is going to go into closed session pursuant to, do we have closed session items? We do? Yes, okay. Texas Government Code 551.071 regarding consultation with our legal counsel, and the time is 10:12 a.m. All right, we are back from closed session at 10:24 a.m. There is no action item coming out of closed session. The board will look at our calendar for the upcoming meetings. We will have, as we previously talked about, and I think Delia informed us via email, we have the convocation for faculty next Monday at 9 a.m. On the 29th at 11:30, we will have public hearing and adoption of our budget. And then on September 12th, Board Day, we will have our regular board meeting day. We will have our public hearing and adoption of our tax rate. The annual conference for the Community College Association of Texas Trustees is happening in September. Our board day in October is the 3rd, and then several of us are going to be attending the national conference in October in Las Vegas as well. Put the date of the scholarship dinner on your calendar, October 19th. It is a fabulous event. The foundation invites the Board of Regents to attend. its foundation donors, and their scholarship students. So if you'd like an opportunity to say thank you to our donors, as well as meet some of our outstanding students, I encourage you to plan on attending the scholarship dinner in October. Is there anything else for discussion today? If not, we are adjourned at 10:26 a.m.